Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt smaller, less respected, because someone dismissed you, talked over you, or mocked your worth? What if I told you, disrespect only survives because you haven't learned how to kill it properly? In this video, I'll teach you, through the cold and strategic lens of Machiavelli, exactly how to eliminate disrespect without ever raising your voice. Power begins with how you respond when someone tries to belittle you. Let's begin with a brutal truth, one most people are too soft to admit. Disrespect is not an accident, it is not a slip of the tongue, it is not someone just having a bad day. It is permission. It is the result of a pattern you have allowed to form. Not because you're weak necessarily, but because you've been unaware. In every human interaction, there's a silent negotiation happening. You teach people how to treat you, not through words, but through boundaries, or the lack of them. When someone cuts you off mid-sentence and you nervously smile, you've trained them. When someone mocks you in front of others and you laugh it off to keep the peace, you have just shown them that peace matters more to you than respect. Disrespect isn't always loud. It often wears subtle disguises. The colleague who always interrupts, the friend who only calls when they need something, the family member who downplays your ambitions and makes jokes in front of others. These are not small things. Each one is a message. You don't matter as much here, and each time you say nothing, do nothing, or rationalize it, you reinforce their behavior. Machiavelli understood this well. He knew that people do not respect goodness for its own sake. They respect strength. They respect discipline. They respect the man who enforces his value. And here is where most people fail. They believe that being understanding will win hearts. They think being agreeable will invite kindness. But human nature does not work this way. People do not respect those who allow themselves to be walked on, even if it's with a smile. In fact, the more tolerant you are of disrespect, the more it grows. It multiplies. Like a weed, it spreads its roots deeper into your social soil, until one day you realize you are surrounded by people who no longer take you seriously, not because they're cruel, but because you trained them not to. We think disrespect comes from people who are naturally harsh, arrogant, or confrontational. But often, it comes from those closest to us, because they know we won't do anything about it. Let me ask you something. Why do people speak to you differently than they speak to someone else? Why do they mock you in group settings but stay cautious around others? It's not because you're inherently less worthy. It's because your reaction does not cost them anything. In Machiavellian terms, when there is no consequence, there is no respect. Disrespect is like theft. If someone steals from you once and you let it slide, they won't just steal again. They'll take more the second time. It starts with small things, a sarcastic tone, a condescending comment, a dismissive gesture. You don't say anything, you think, it's not worth it, I don't want to seem insecure, but every time you absorb disrespect, you bleed credibility, not visibly, but socially, psychologically. You become the person people talk over, the one they don't invite to serious discussions, the one they mock behind your back, because they've tested your limits and found none. Machiavelli would say, "It is better to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both." That's not a call to cruelty. It's a reminder, without consequence, love becomes comfort, and comfort breeds disrespect. So if someone repeatedly disrespects you, it is not because they're out of control. It's because you've created a space where that behavior is not only possible, it's safe. Safe for them, dangerous for you. Let's be clear. Disrespect does not survive where there is clarity, where people know, if they cross a line, there will be a cost. You don't have to shout. You don't need to fight. You just need to draw your lines with the calm, unwavering energy of someone who knows exactly what they are worth, and who will never explain that worth to those who can't see it. Because the moment you start justifying yourself to people who consistently show you disrespect, you're already on the back foot. And Machiavelli warns, those who beg to be respected lose the very respect they seek. So now ask yourself, how many times have you let something slide thinking you were being mature? How often have you tolerated subtle insults in the name of keeping harmony? And what has that harmony cost you? Let me tell you something most people will never admit aloud. Power is not real. It's not written in bloodlines. It's not hidden in muscles. It's not locked in a vault somewhere. Power is perception. It's what others believe about you, and once they believe you're powerful, even if you're not, your influence multiplies. In the mind of Machiavelli, this is the very foundation of human control. Men are ruled not by truth, but by the appearance of truth. You don't need to be dangerous. You only need to appear as if crossing you is dangerous. You don't need to always win. You just need to look as if you never lose. It is a game of symbols, of posture, of what your silence says louder than your words ever could. Think carefully. Have you ever seen a man who says very little, yet commands a room the moment he enters? He does not rush to speak. He does not react emotionally. He does not try to impress. And somehow, everyone watches him a little closer. That's not magic. That's not charisma. That's calculated perception. The weak scream, the strong stay still, and make others wonder. In every social hierarchy, power is a costume. Some wear it confidently. Others fumble trying to tailor it. But the ones who understand this truth, those are the ones who can rise without ever making noise. Most people get it wrong. They think power comes from proving themselves, talking more, showing off, trying to dominate every conversation. But the more you explain yourself, the weaker you look. Because true strength is not in being understood, it's in being felt. You don't tell people who you are. You let them sense that messing with you comes at a cost, even if that cost is mystery. Machiavelli wrote that it's safer to be feared than loved, and here's why. Love is earned slowly and lost quickly. Fear, however, is remembered, not the fear of violence, but the fear of unpredictability. The fear of someone who does not play by emotional rules. The fear of someone who doesn't need your validation, approval, or presence. The moment people sense that you are not emotionally reactive, that you are not easily baited, that your silence is intentional, that your boundaries are non-negotiable, that is the moment they begin to tread lightly. This is where perception shapes reality. If you walk into every room needing something, attention, praise, comfort, you look hungry, and people do not fear the hungry, they exploit them. But if you walk in like you already have everything you need, if your body language says, "I'm not here to impress, I'm here to observe," they project power onto you, and projection is where perception begins. Even in conflict, the Machiavellian mind knows, never rush to defend. Because when someone insults you, they want your energy, they want your reaction, they want the show. But if you respond with silence, with a cold stare, with complete stillness, you confuse them. They don't know what's coming next. They don't know if you're planning something, or if you simply don't care enough to respond. Both options are unsettling, and both create power. The quiet man is unpredictable, and the unpredictable man is dangerous. Perception also demands consistency. You can't be stoic one day and desperate the next. You can't act controlled in public and emotional in private with those who gossip, because people talk, and perception travels faster than truth. If one person sees you lose control, panic, overshare, or apologize for existing, they carry that version of you into every room. Your image is no longer yours. They wear it for you. This is why Machiavelli advised rulers to always maintain a facade of strength, even if they were drowning behind closed doors. Because if people see you as powerful, they will act accordingly. They will question before criticizing. They will hesitate before offending. They will speak your name with caution, not mockery. But if they sense fragility, if they smell desperation, if they see inconsistency, then your title, your talents, your truth, none of it matters, because you've lost the illusion, and without perception, power evaporates. In the world of strategy and respect, kindness without consequence becomes weakness. People may smile with you, joke with you, flatter you, but the true test of your power is what happens when someone crosses a line. Do they flinch? Do they stop? Or do they feel safe enough to do it again? Understand this. Disrespect once shown cannot be politely reasoned with. It must be punished, not emotionally, not explosively, but with precision, with purpose, with symbolism. Machiavelli taught that if punishment is necessary, it should be immediate, memorable, and above all, calculated. You do not wait, you do not overreact, you strike exactly where it hurts, and then you retreat into silence. Why swift? Because when punishment is delayed, the lesson is lost. When someone disrespects you and you let it linger, hours pass, days pass, you start second, guessing, and then, maybe, you respond. It looks insecure, it looks reactive. It looks like you're unsure whether you deserve respect at all. And worse, they've already moved on. You're punishing someone who no longer even remembers the crime, but when your response is immediate, when they say the wrong thing and your reaction cuts cleanly, instantly, they remember, not because you shouted, not because you caused a scene, but because your response was surgical, unmistakable, final. Swift action shocks the system. It signals that you are not to be tested again. It tells every onlooker, this person is not someone to cross lightly. People are always watching, even when they pretend not to. They observe how you let others treat you. They memorize what you tolerate. So when someone steps out of line, and you enforce a consequence with no apology and no explanation, you don't just teach the offender. You teach everyone else what your boundaries are made of. But here's the second law of Machiavellian punishment. It must be symbolic. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can argue back. But the strategist knows the most powerful punishments are not just loud. They are psychological. You don't need to destroy your enemy. You need to create a memory. You don't need revenge. You need a message. Because when punishment becomes symbolic, it echoes beyond the moment. If someone disrespects you in a room full of people, you don't argue. You don't stoop to their level, you simply remove your energy, you exit. You withdraw your support, your presence, your approval. Publicly and cleanly, you make them feel the loss without even saying a word. That is symbolic power. When Machiavelli advised princes on how to deal with betrayal, he said, "Let your punishment serve as a warning to others, not through cruelty, but through clarity." The point is not to appear angry. The point is to appear unshakable. A man who punishes with rage looks emotional. A man who punishes with silence looks like a threat. And this is where most people destroy their own authority. They explode. They argue, they cry, they want justice, but they give away power. Because the moment your punishment becomes emotional, it's no longer strategic, it's reactive. What you want is impact without theatrics. You want a consequence so perfectly tailored to the offense that the other person thinks twice before ever trying it again. They laugh at you in public, you remove access, you cut them off from what they value, whether it's your time, your attention, or your influence. They manipulate you in private. You don't confront them with complaints. You change your behavior. You let them chase what they once had freely. Symbolic punishment is not about revenge. It's about cost. You make them pay without ever naming the price, because the true Machiavellian does not bark. He bites once, clean, sharp, and unforgettable, and then he watches the ripple effect do the rest of the work. Fear is not born from how loud you react. It's born from the realization that you are not afraid to cut things off, that when someone disrespects you, there is no debate, only consequence. This is how kings hold their courts. This is how leaders rise above equals, and this is how you stop tolerating and start commanding. There is a kind of power most people never understand because it doesn't speak, it doesn't argue, it doesn't demand attention. It disappears, and in that disappearance, it leaves a silence that speaks louder than any confrontation ever could. Your presence can be impressive, but your absence, that can be unforgettable. It can haunt conversations. It can echo in the minds of those who once overlooked you. In the modern world, people think control is in dominance, in always being visible, in showing up and being loud enough to take space. But the Machiavellian mind understands this. If your presence becomes too common, your value begins to fade. What is constantly available loses its weight. What is rarely seen becomes sacred. You want people to feel your absence like an empty throne, noticeable, unsettling, meaningful. When someone disrespects you, mocks you, plays with your boundaries, do not argue, do not explain, Do not beg to be understood. Withdraw. Pull back your attention like it is gold. Because it is. Attention is power. Presence is power, but only when it's scarce, only when it's earned. Most people stay in places they are disrespected because they want to be chosen. They want to be accepted. But understand this. Begging for presence in a space where you're not respected is the fastest way to kill your own authority. You become forgettable, replaceable, predictable. They know you'll always come back. They know you'll always forgive. They know you won't walk away, and so they treat you accordingly. But when you leave, coldly, confidently, and without dramatic exits, you trigger something far more powerful than anger. You trigger doubt. They start to ask themselves, why did he leave so easily? Why didn't he try to fix it? Was I not as valuable to him as I thought? Doubt is the doorway to respect. It makes people reflect in ways that arguments never will. You don't force them to see your value. You make them feel the absence of it. When Machiavelli observed the behavior of kings and diplomats, he noticed that their strength often didn't lie in words or swords. It was in how carefully they placed their presence. They would appear rarely, speak little, but their absence would always create a void. That void, that was their power. You have to understand something about human nature. People only appreciate what they fear losing. If you're always available, emotionally, physically, socially, you become background noise. But when you remove yourself, when you vanish from places where your presence was taken for granted, you become a question mark. A mystery, and mystery demands attention. The moment you stop showing up to defend yourself, to explain your worth, to chase clarity, that's the moment they realize they're no longer in control. You are. Because you did what most people are too afraid to do. You walked away when the respect ended. Absence also gives you leverage. While they talk, you stay silent. While they post, you disappear. While they gossip, you build. And when you return, if you choose to, you return on your own terms, not as the one seeking approval, but as the one whose value has grown in the shadows. When someone realizes they no longer have access to you, they begin to panic. Not because you shouted, not because you argued, but because your silence cannot be controlled. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know if you'll come back. And that uncertainty, that's where fear lives. That's where respect is reborn. The weak believe presence is power. The strong know that controlled presence is power. This is why you never overexpose yourself. Even when you're loved, even when you're celebrated, you maintain space. Because distance creates curiosity, and curiosity fuels value, you must learn to let people sit with the consequences of losing you. Stop rushing to heal what they broke. Stop trying to remind them of your worth. Let them feel the cost. Let the silence stretch. Let the distance educate them, because your absence, when used with intent, is not just a reaction. It becomes a weapon, a signal, a lesson they will never forget. Disrespect is not an accident. It is a reflection of what you've allowed, and once you understand this, the game changes. You no longer beg for respect. You engineer it through the image you project. Through the punishments you deliver, through the silence you weaponize, through the space you control. Machiavelli did not preach loud dominance. He preached strategic presence. He taught that in a world ruled by wolves, it is better to be feared than forgotten. And if people do not feel the cost of crossing you, they will cross you again. So do not chase respect. Do not explain your value. Let your perceptions speak. Let your consequences teach. And when necessary, let your absence remind them. You were never someone they could afford to lose.